So we're live on YouTube, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, I just got a notice on my screen that said, this meeting is being recorded. Are you consenting?
Oh, it's getting fancier.
Yeah.
Hey, Jamel,
Hey, Rick.
can you unmute me on the phone?
Sure. We can hear you this way as well. You're
Yeah, I
not
get
muted.
feedback on my end.
Your phone is not muted, actually.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
Should work.
All right. Can you still hear me okay, though? All right. I'm just experimenting with audio. My computer audio, unfortunately, isn't very loud, so I prefer to use my phone because I can turn that way up in lieu of getting hearing aids, which I probably should get too. Most of the time I'm talking to my parents, so a lack of hearing aids is a benefit.
Looks like we're still waiting for Nick McGee. So we can give him a few minutes. I'll leave it up to you, Rachel.
Yeah, let's give him a couple minutes.
Okay. Thanks.
I assume one of you has got the American flag ready.
I do.
And there's Nick.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We have everyone. Jamel?
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Jamel? Okay. We have quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's do this. All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Monday, June 7th, 2021, Town of Scarborough Planning Board meeting. If you could all join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Not sure who the phone is, the 207, we know who that is?
It's Rick DePerry, I think.
Well,
It is.
Okay, so who's the other Rick DePerry? There's two on my screen.
I think he's in on the phone and on his computer.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, if I could get off of one, I would try to do it, but I use the phone for audio and the computer for visual. That's okay.
Gotcha. That's okay.
All right, Tony, could you do the roll, please?
Yes. Rachel Hendrickson,
Here.
Roger Beely,
Here.
Jennifer Ladd,
Here.
and Richard DePerry, alternate. And
Here.
Chairman Nick McGee.
Here.
And we also have Jamel Torres, the assistant town planner, and Angela Blanchette, the town engineer.
And Russell.
Have
And-
Russell
And
Scudder.
Russell Scudder. So sorry, Russell.
No problem. Here.
All right. We're short Rick Mind King this evening, so Rick DePerry will be our voting member this evening for the fifth one to round it out. Next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for April 12th, 26th, and May 17th. I've been informed that these are not quite ready yet, and we will have to table this until the next meeting. Item number 5, 100 Higas LLC requests a sketch plan review for 100 Higas Parkway, Assessor's Maps R40, lots 13, 27, and 27B. Jamel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this project was actually on the board's last agenda, but it was tabled due to the late hour. So they did not resubmit. So same materials as last time. And the sketch plans for a property located just south of the existing golf and ski warehouse at the corner, near the corner of Higas Parkway and Payne Road. And a sketch plan review, just a quick reminder, it's just an opportunity for the board and the applicant to have a high level discussion leading up to a formal application to the board in the future. So staff would like to note that the zoning ordinance requires a restaurant with drive-through services as permitted as part of a plan development review process. So actually the next step in the process will be site inventory and analysis and the master plan review. Staff did note that the 25-foot landscape buffer is required along the property's Higas Parkway frontage. While the ordinance does allow for driveways and utilities to cross the buffer, it does appear that the driveway may actually traverse the buffer, which would appear that the function of the buffer may not be maintained. So staff has actually recommended a modified design to ensure the required buffering is maintained. And also, given that the project is required to be reviewed again as a plan development, the ordinance does require projects to be walkable and pedestrian oriented, have a unified and coordinated building design, and provide for open space and natural resource conservation. And finally, the commercial design standards do require the location of drive-throughs to be located along the side or rear of the building with screening. So staff has recommended that the applicant modify the design, resulting in the relocation of the drive-through to the south or western building elevation. At this point, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jamel. And for the applicant, Mr. Sturgeon or Mr. Toby?
Yes, good evening, members of the board. I can probably present most of the project. Sean Toby from Hoyle Tanner Associates. Andy Sturgeon is also with Hoyle Tanner, and I believe we have Richard McGoldrick and Dan Catlin from Higas LLC. I can share my screen here just to kind of get started to show where we are. So this is a kind of a Google Earth overview to show where the project is located, kind of on the corner of Higas and Payne Road. You got exit 42 here, Cabela's, the Downs is here, the Beacon, and then there's the proposed Acura dealership on this corner as well. And if I just kind of spin to match the plans, you know, these are the 3 existing parcels that total just over 9 acres. This is the existing golf and ski shop, as well as the urgent care. So the lot that we are initially looking at are these 2 here. And then because these are all 3 in common ownership, we decided, because of the unique shape of this lot, that we would adjust the property lines to have more area to work with. And as mentioned, the proposed building area is situated probably right about in here. There's an existing stream that comes through the back of the site, and then pockets of wetlands in here. And so this is the proposed design that we're looking to do on the site. It would be a restaurant with drive-through facility on the end. There would be a retail component in the middle of the building, a bank on this end, and then a second story of office space. Trying to get a good mixed use kind of clientele on the corner here, especially with the apartments here and all the development going on the other sides. We thought that these uses really coincided with what was there, and then also would capture a lot of trips in the area. And so we just kind of wanted to go through with the board, because it's a very unique site in the sense that it has a lot of frontage where you have Payne Road and you have Higas Parkway. And with the existing access that comes through out to Higas Parkway, DOT has a restriction on this driveway that any new development in here requires pulling this driveway back to the location where it's situated now. So that's kind of why we have this unique driveway that comes through, because we're trying to maintain this pass through from the Beacon. There's cross easements that allow a lot of interconnection to the different businesses to keep trips off of the main roads. So we tried to push the road as back, you know, this is the limit of where the curb cut would be. It's teed up with the Acura dealership that is proposed on the other side. And we bring it in front of the buildings and then back through here. We felt it was probably the best location. I mean, we could probably talk as we get into the questions a little bit further with that. And then also with the building itself, we tried to face the building towards the main view shed of the property, which is this intersection. You know, with a retail use, we want it visible from here. And that kind of forces the drive-through to be on these ends here. So even though this is kind of the face of the property, we're leaving the vegetation here while maintaining kind of this is the front. So it's a unique situation where we assume that when cars are traveling 40 miles an hour through here, they're not looking hard right at this end of the building. It'll be fairly screened with the decorative front of the building and the storefronts facing the main intersection on that side. We really tried to design it so that all these facilities, the sidewalks, this building has a lot of interconnected. There's a sidewalk that runs through here, connects back around to Payne Road, and then this sidewalk connects all the way back to the Beacon. So with our design, we picked up the sidewalk, continued it all the way through and through here, and then up all along the front of this building itself. We don't have any proposed connection kind of back out to Higas because there's no sidewalks there now. I mean, that's something we could explore if the board felt that was important. But right now we wanted to maintain the good connectivity here as well as all the residents that are out here. And going forward with the design, there would be some pockets of wetland fill to accommodate this. The remaining areas would stay undisturbed. We're teetering on the line with a site law. Depending on where we end up with the final layout going forward. Early coordination with DEP has shown that these two properties will be considered common scheme, and going forward with the permits, all of this would need to be worked together within those permits along with existing wetland fill. So I think at this point, I turn it back over to the board. If there's any questions, I think we'd like to just kind of get some initial feedback, see which direction we should be headed as we kind of take this and put it into more hard line work and design and move from there.
Thank you very much. We do have an opportunity for public comment on this item. If there's anyone here that wants to speak on this, please use the raise my hand feature. All right. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and just turn it over to the board. Would anyone like to jump in with any questions or comments on this? Rachel.
Yeah, I guess the first question I have, since that's considered common property or development, does that mean that you're looking at the architecture being somehow or other harmonized or coordinated with the buildings that are already there? That would
Yes, correct. With both DEP from the stormwater standpoint, that'll be common scheme. So the existing permit for the golf and ski shop will be modified. And then as well as with the plan development through the town's review, everything will be designed to flow and mesh so the buildings match, yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. I think one of the questions I have, or concerns I have, is the traffic flow around the building. And it looks as though you have folks not good with the directions. I guess that's the south where the bank is.
Correct, yeah.
All right, they're going to exit. And if they want to leave the property, they're going to they have to turn left. At the same time as people who are queuing for the restaurant takeout are going to be turning around that corner and also going to the left. And it seems to me that that's going to be a recipe for some fender benders, unless there's really good signage or a way that you're going to be handling that queuing while people are exiting from the drive-through at the bank. So you don't have to tell me what you're going to do right now, but that's something that I would have a concern about. One of the things I actually think that it makes a lot of sense that the front of the building is considered basically the view shed that you have and onto Payne Road, rather than the front of the building, which is you would otherwise have to flip the building to get the front onto Higas Parkway. So I think that's what you have here is a way to look at it that I think makes some sense. It might be helpful if you show us what would happen if you did flip it so that the front of the building very clearly is on Higas. I don't think that really would work too well, but I'd appreciate being able to see that to come to a firm decision on what we would consider the front of the building to be. I think we need to continue the sidewalks. As we go along with Higas Parkway, as the downs come in, as sidewalks go in, there's going to be a lot of effort of more people starting to walk up Higas Parkway.
Mhm.
So to that extent, sidewalks at a couple of different places I would guess might be possible. And one is up the curved driveway so that people can continue past the buildings that are already there and cut across to Cabela's at the light. That's an option. Using the cut that's already there, but since the ground's already cleared, making that a sidewalk from Higas directly so that people aren't walking around.
Yeah.
That's a possibility, but I do think a connection of this property from Higas to the probably the Beacon Gateway sidewalk would be a very, very positive aspect of the development and of the neighborhood. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, we can definitely, the angles of the building, we kind of went back and forth on that a lot with trying to find the best way to get the storefronts visible and the best angle. So we have some old renderings that we could submit just for reference, kind of as we went through that exercise, so you can kind of see what they look like. And then also with Higas Parkway, we're coordinating with Sebago Technics is doing the Acura dealership. Goral Palmer, as you know, is doing the downs. So there's kind of 3 people reworking that Higas Parkway section all at once. And we'll work with them to make sure that any sidewalk improvements, turn lane improvements all get coordinated together as we go forward as well with DOT.
Okay, I do think pushing people towards the actual intersection of Payne Road and Higas, pedestrians towards there is not something to be desired. They're not going to most people are not going to want to try to cross Payne Road there. They are more likely to want to try to cross Payne Road where the Beacon driveway comes out. So any connection to that driveway, I think is important.
Yeah, and we'll work with DOT. There may be some safety concerns about a mid-block crossing, just with the width of those lanes and the speeds. But we'll work with them to find, what solution they find the most safest or the best way to proceed forward.
Well, yeah, the Beacon is already signalized, so it would be possible there for people to do a cross there.
Okay.
As I suspect they're doing now directly from the Beacon.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Any other board members with thoughts or comments? Roger Bealey.
Actually, this is a question for Jamal. Can they have 2 drive-throughs on this property, according to the ordinance?
Yeah, so the bank or whatever other institution could have one, as long as it's screened. And then the drive-through restaurant can be there so long as it's, I think it's 50% mixed use, to be exact. I have to look at the ordinance, but yes.
Yeah, well, when I read the ordinance, I thought I read that you could only have 1 drive-through. So I was kind of curious whether it's 18B 6B.
Okay, let me.
I was just wondering if, pardon me?
Just if you keep discussing, I'll look for that and then I'll get back to you.
And the only reason I brought it up is if that's indeed what it is, then would they have to request a waiver? All right, I'll ask another question. On the on that triangle right behind Golf and Ski that you folks own?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right there. Can you do anything with that, or is that? Can you?
I mean, there's really nothing from a building standpoint. By the time you get the setbacks in there, it shrinks up so small. But if there's anything from an aesthetic feature or landscaping, that definitely could be done, yes.
Well, the reason I asked that is because, along with what Rachel was talking about, repositioning the building so it's more directed towards the parkway. And I didn't know whether you were able to utilize anything with that piece of property, because it looks like kind of dead space right there now.
Yeah, it's just once you get, by the time you get the setbacks in there, you're kind of limited about that. It's pretty tight. That's the only issue with that. We did look at a little bit of parking there, but we thought it was best to just kind of keep that natural landscaped area.
Okay. It's going to be an interesting project to be located right there. And certainly I concur with the pedestrian connections, because you got all the apartments right there, and certainly with a restaurant and coffee. I think it's going to be a coffee shop, I'm not sure, and a bank. I guess that's the only question I had, other than the question I put to Jamal.
Yeah, I can jump in if you want.
Yeah.
So the ordinance says that one restaurant is allowed with drive-through service. So the other business or entity would not be allowed to be a restaurant with a drive-through.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'm all set.
Thank you, Roger. Any other board members with thoughts, questions, input?
This is Rick. I just have a quick one. Kind of what Rachel was saying. So that where the bank drive-through comes around, and there's the other drive-through coming around on that lower right-hand corner. Down a little bit right there, that tree right there, you obviously want to, I know you're trying to do as much landscaping and make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible, but anything that, just a thought, because
Yeah,
I can see that as a pinch point. And then
get rid of that. And our plan with this is that, so if you're coming into the drive-through, you would come in through here, go around, and then you would queue. There'd be 11 car queue here, which is sufficient for the use. And then the bank would come through with a stop here and a stop bar. Well, like you said, we'll remove that tree and make sure that that's not a pinch point. And then this drive-through would exit back through here. And then any of the bank with a bypass would have a right out that way if they had to. But we'll definitely go through that in more detail and make sure that that's a solid flow.
Okay, appreciate that, Sean. And then the other thought would be up where you just exited to the right. Yep, right there. I'm not sure if it makes sense or not, but that tree line, if I was exiting to the right there, I may want to take a left just because I could. If that tree line and that island was shifted up a little bit so that you could impede that left-hand turn, then they'd have to go around the parking lot. It just from a traffic accident standpoint, that might be something to consider. I don't know if anybody else. You know what? Jennifer might have some input on that. She's the traffic expert.
All right, thank you, Rick. Jennifer?
I had the same question, Rick, actually, until I noticed that they did include a bypass lane before that point for traffic. It looks like wanting to take a left. Is that right? The two arrows there up at so if you were not to go through the drive-through, but you wanted to say head back towards Payne Road right there, yeah.
Yeah, you could continue out and around and then go north or south from this point here.
Gotcha, yeah. That it just took me a minute to kind of mentally drive around there myself. Which actually brought me to another comment. Understanding you're just at sketch plan level and not fully dimensioned here, but the drive aisle at the very bottom of this plan, yep, right there with a one-way arrow. Again, for someone, as you have this laid out, if someone were to leave one of those parking spaces and want to head back to Payne Road.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you've laid that out, while it makes sense to me, if it didn't make sense to me, it would feel sort of circuitous. And I think it could lend itself to people going the wrong direction there. So I guess I would just be curious to know if there's any possibility for that to actually be two-way and signed two-way, such that, you know, it just allows a little better two-way flow around that part of the building.
Yep, I definitely think we could look into that. And another thought too is I believe we're overparked by 12 spaces between the two buildings. We had a little bit of flexibility. So I think maybe we could look at the option of just kind of eliminating all those spaces and making that a landscaped area as well, just so there's not those pinch points.
Yep. The other thing, it looked like to me like a slight skew in entrances to the two different parking areas. So for example, if you've come in off of Haggis Parkway and you've come in along the long driveway, yep. So right where you have the first opportunity to take a right, yep, towards Golfin Ski or left. Yeah, those two. I'm sure you are looking to try and get, you know, the longest parking stalls that you can in sort of that main parking field, but sometimes misalignments like that can be a little bit tricky. That's all.
Yeah, and we can look at the option of, I think maybe the best bet, maybe lose a little bit with the building, but we could shift this up so that those two were probably 12 feet apart. We're probably not too far off to get those aligned.
Yeah, I mean, I just picture like a plow driver or something, you know, they're probably going to plow over that or whatever. And then I did notice early on the proposed like pretty good pedestrian connectivity on the site that you are proposing and how that connects in with what's there already at the 273 Payne Road. And therefore then also noticed the lack of similar accommodations out towards the Parkway. While I agree with a lot of the comments about the development coming in this area and bringing potentially a lot more people that are living here and working here and certainly being here within a walkable distance for the better part of their days, I just can't get over, and these are sort of like higher level questions, but the width of the right of way on Haggis Parkway is so huge that, and the infrastructure both there and at the intersection there with the Payne Road, which doesn't appear, at least in this aerial view, to even have pedestrian accommodations now, which is not to say that they couldn't, but all this infrastructure and the distance between all of these things is just very large. So I am always in favor of the best way that we can support these types of developments with walkable infrastructure where that is most appropriate. But I'm just curious, you know, particularly like, does the DOT have any, I would just hate for one development like yours to come in, or any of the others that we've looked at, you know, there's a lot of proposed work coming along this whole corridor, to come in with sidewalk connections to then either have the road widened or changed in some other significant way. So I guess it could just be a very simple question to DOT. DOT, do you ever have any plans on the, you know, somewhat feasible horizon to do anything different out here, whether that be more pedestrian friendly or less pedestrian friendly? And if so, if you can get an answer, great. If you can't, you know, we would probably look for the similar accommodations like we would on any other site. I would just hate to see you or anyone else make that type of connection to not have the supporting infrastructure ever seen there. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just what I've been thinking about when looking at this site and the corridor overall. And then my only other last question was whether or not you had any high-level plans for development of that bottom lot, lot 40-13, it looks like? And if so, how that might integrate into the site plan that you've laid out for the current building as proposed?
Yeah, and
Understanding that you are relocating this one stormwater feature as a result of this project.
Yeah, and I don't think at this point there would be any plans for 40-13. We don't fully, the wetland flagging stops here, but this is all
Okay.
pretty much wetlands in through
Got it.
here, so that would just be left as is.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Any other board questions or comments? Okay. With that, I think we'll see you again in a few weeks, perhaps, and hopefully you take all of that feedback and you'll be on your way for your site plan.
All right, well,
Okay.
thank you for the comments, and we'll be back.
Thank you very much.
Next item on tonight's agenda is 3 Diamond Realty LLC requests a master plan amendment review as part of the plan development project for 25 to 29 Higas Parkway. Assessors map R52 lots 34A through C. Jamel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this project's also in the Higas Parkway zoning district, a little bit south of the last project. So as the board may recall, the applicant did receive approval for this master plan back in 2020. And the applicant's before you all this evening to amend the master plan to revert the plans back to the original subdivision property lines to the project that was approved by the state, not locally, just by the state in 2008. The applicant's also proposing to update the approved square footage ratio of non-residential uses versus residential uses. So the applicant was last before you all at your last meeting in May. And as you may recall, staff suggested that the applicant provide additional details related to the conceptual build-out analysis to be sure that the proposed parking and stormwater management elements will be adequate in the future. So the applicant did provide these details with the submission, and staff's generally comfortable with what they provided. So at this point, staff will share a draft motion for the project if the board is ready. Turn it back to you.
Thanks, Jamel. And for the applicant, we have you're gonna have to help me with your last name, Tony. Is it Penocchio? You're on mute, luckily. How bad did I butcher that? Oh, I don't know if you're on mute. I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear him? Is it just my side?
I can't hear him, no.
No, I can't hear him either.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Sorry about that. It's Tony Panciocco. Jason's not available today, so I'm filling in for him. Atlantic Resource Consultants.
All right, so go ahead and give us just a brief outline of what it is you're requesting of the board tonight.
Well, let me just back up a little bit and say, based on previous comments, we went in and modified the master plan, put a matrix table on here to try to kind of explain how everything would actually fit on the plan. We do need to update one thing. We had the parking lot on a couple of those lots. But anyway, we'd like to ask for approval of the master plan. I would say probably with the condition to adjust the parking based on Jamel's comments, so that we can move forward and at some point, probably within, I don't know, a month or so, submit a subdivision application and move forward with the project.
All right. Thank you very much. We do have opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone here that would like to make a comment, please use the raise my hand feature. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Turn it over to the board. Anyone on the board have any questions for the applicant on this? Rachel.
Yeah, it's not a question. There's a couple of observations. One is I note that you decrease the size on lot 2 and 3 from the 120,000 square foot at light industrial to looks like 105,000 square foot. So I think that's certainly seems to fit the lot, the parking a lot better. And one of the initial concerns prior to, I think, the last meeting was a question asked of the board by the staff about the apartment building in lot, I think it was 7, but it was the apartment building that was sitting by itself along Higas Parkway, and concerns, if we had any concerns about that building. And as you go forward, I would say that one of my concerns becomes the fact that all of the parking is right on Higas Parkway. And then the building also appears to be close to Higas Parkway without, and it's not clear if there would be an adequate buffer. So I would simply say, as you come to us with additional material and with your subdivision requests, that's going to be something that I'm going to be looking at because it is a concern. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Roger. Roger, you're on mute.
I got a guy mowing my lawn next door, so that's why. Not my lawn, his lawn. I'm basically satisfied with the what's been presented to us. I just had a question on the same lot that Rachel was just referring to, which is lot 8, I believe. Is the plan still to have a combined entrance with the restaurant that was already approved to go in there?
There we go. Sorry, again, having trouble unmuting. At this point, I'm not entirely sure. I don't believe we are doing the actual site plan for that lot.
I can jump in too, Tony. That project hasn't been approved by the board yet. So.
But the restaurant?
Yeah, no, it has not.
Oh, it had? Oh, it hadn't?
Nope.
Okay.
They've been before you guys 2 or 3 times, but I never received approval. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, that's all I had then.
Thanks, Roger. Any other board questions or comments? Okay. With that, Jamel or Angela, somebody want to share the motion?
I have it up, Angela, so I can share it. Thanks. See it okay?
I can.
Cool.
I move to approve the conceptual master plan titled Higas Parkway Master Plan proposed by 3 Diamond Realty LLC as depicted in the application materials packet prepared by Atlantic Resources Consultants dated May 21st, 2021 with the following conditions. 1, the maximum allowance for residential uses within the project shall be 125,467 square feet. 2, address the remaining comments noted in the staff review memo dated 6/7/21 related to the master plan approval and as discussed with the planning board. It's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor? Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Roger Beely.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd.
Yes.
Rick Duperi.
Yes.
Nick McGee, yes. Thank you. Show that is unanimous. Good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on tonight's agenda is Crossroads Holdings LLC requests a subdivision amendment review for the town's center residential subdivision at the Downs Assessors Map R52 Lot 4. Jamel.
All right, so for this one, the applicant's proposing to create a total of 6 new lots within the existing planned development area. The lots are intended to include a mix of single family, an assisted living facility, and multifamily condominium buildings with associated utilities. The proposal also includes the connection of Front Runner Way and Hackamore Avenue, along with the creation of a private driveway servicing 5 of the new lots. The staff did note in the comments that the zoning ordinance does require street trees along both sides of the streets. So staff has recommended additional street trees along a portion of Scarborough Downs Road and along both sides of the proposed private driveway. Staff also recommended a pedestrian gathering area or plaza be provided at the Front Runner Way, Hackamore Avenue intersection, given that this appears to be a pretty major intersection in the project now and in the future. The applicant's also proposing this intersection to include a leg that is not 90 degrees, like your typical four-way intersection that you see. So at a staff level meeting, staff did suggest that other options or designs be explored for that part of the intersection. It also appears that the applicant's not proposing any streetlights along the proposed private driveway, and staff's unclear if there's adequate lighting at the curve of the driveway. I'll turn it back to you at this point.
Thanks, Jamel. Dan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Planning Board and staff. As Jamel indicated, this subdivision amendment, and actually, Drew, if you don't mind sharing your screen, can add some context here. This subdivision amendment really is kind of geared for two areas of the town center residential part of the project. As the board knows, we're incrementally building out the town center residential district of the project between really the heart of the project, the grandstand area to the north, and phase one, the Mill Village area to the south. So as you can see on this plan, I think Drew, your next plan shows where this amendment, for one, creates the lot for the American Homes Senior Living Facility, which the board looked at for sketch plan. That's in that location. So that's one key reason to be before you. And then the second reason is to continue residential development to the east and to round out our second pocket neighborhood. The pocket neighborhood design with 8 houses surrounding green was super successful in the first phase. You can go out there today. Some of them are beginning to be occupied. And so we're going to do another small kind of pocket neighborhood in this next part of town center residential. And then next to it, we're going to be adding an additional lot for multi-unit type housing. We're actually thinking about kind of micro homes or tiny homes, but that design process is still kind of underway. So at a high level, those are the two reasons for our amendment before you this evening. To keep American Homes kind of on track with their site plan review and continue that pocket neighborhood. From there, I'm going to let kind of Drew walk through the details and then answer some of the staff comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Drew Gagnon here with Goral Palmer. Just going to walk you guys through a little bit more detail on what we're providing here in this third amended subdivision. So this is a bit of a zoom in of that master plan that I just showed you on the previous slide. The red highlighted area is the area that we are applying for in the third amendment subdivision. So as Dan mentioned, this is lot 34, we're calling it, which is American House at the Downs. That was before you for sketch plan 3 weeks ago, as well as the completion of the second pocket neighborhood on the project in this area, as well as the creation of a multi-unit condo project that Dan mentioned right down here. So this kind of shows the second pocket neighborhood that's planned right here. This is the first one that is currently under construction and getting occupied. I'm going to turn everyone 90 degrees once again here and showing the engineering plans. Really, this is just highlighting everything, the limit of work with the dashed line here. And I'm going to start at the northern end of the project here, which is on this side. So this is a blow up of the Redico lot that we've been calling it. I mentioned was before you from sketch plan. So the scope of this work is going to be extending Downs Road about 220 feet with all the utilities, as well as looping Front Runner and Hackamore in around the gravel wetlands. If I go back a slide, this was proposed as a performance guarantee from the second amended subdivision. As just a formal connection that we worked out with the fire department and town staff for the townhouse lot. So we're back in front of you for the formal acceptance of the roadway as part of this next third amended phase. So with this lot, we're also proposing gravity sewer main down to the second pump station down here, which will be the second one on site for the down. So we'd be extending or creating the sewer main, 12-inch sewer main up Downs Road in the alignment of the future and existing Downs Road, as well as cutting across lot 34 for future development. So we're cutting across this lot here with an easement to benefit Scarborough Sanitary District in order for future development east and north of the Downs to be able to hook up to a public gravity sewer main and convey the flow down here. This hatched area is the easement area, and this is also a stormwater easement area for Redico as well. south side of the project here, this is the micro home and the other cottage court lot that we mentioned earlier. So this is, you can see 4 additional lots being proposed facing the 4 that were previously approved through the second amended subdivision. This is the private drive that we're proposing to access the 4 lots. So they're going to be alley loaded, similar to Futurity Lane over here and the Hayloft Lane and Daisy Cutter Lane a little bit further up in the first phase. So similar layout there where the garages are out back of the house. That's where the vehicle access points are. This private drive will also provide access to the lot down here, which is the multi-unit condo lot that Dan mentioned we're working on. So utilities with this lot is stubs from the previous phase in the green. As you can see, it's very busy in there. And then also some private services, water, sewer, gas, electric, underground electric in the private alley for the future lot. This is a quick overview of the stormwater plan. The Downs Road is anticipated not to be treated, and it's going to be bypassed to Willowdale Brook. That's part of our Town Center North SLDA level 2 approval through the state that this was planned to be untreated in this area. So we do not need to construct the next gravel wetland, which would be north of this site. Front Runner and Hackamore is proposed to go to the existing gravel wetland 1. That's been planned for all along, so we're just providing that treatment. And then down here, as part of our level 2, which is pending, and I will get into the schedule of that in a little bit here, a portion, most of this lot here and a portion of the multi-unit condo lots will be going to the level lip spreader just south of the site. And then we're also using drip edge treatments for the houses along here and in here. Fairly simple stormwater plan. This is just a landscaping plan, and I'll touch on some of the town comments here in just a minute. Really, the bulk of the landscaping is being focused up on the public right-of-ways that we're proposing. So we have street trees on both sides of the road on Hackamore and Front Runner, and then on one side of the road on Scarborough on the western side. So I'm going to discuss quickly the Hackamore Avenue and Front Runner Way connection. That'll go on the next slide, so I'll skip that for just a second. Street trees and lighting along the private drive. So town comment was they're requesting street trees on both sides of the private drive as well as lighting. Consistent with previous phases, the lighting is really intended to be from the garages of the individual homeowners. So that's just that's going to help light the roads there a little bit. And then street trees, if I go back just a couple slides here, this entire eastern portion of the private drive is going to be remain intact as it's a big wetland. And we actually have a retaining wall fairly close to the drive aisle there. So the trees will be very close to the drive aisle already. And the existing vegetation is going to be cut back just enough to get the wall in. So it's only a few feet off the retaining wall where the natural vegetation will be. On the other side, consistent with what we've seen in the first phase where we have these really thin lots and then the driveways essentially take up almost most of the lot to get to your garage. There's really not whole lot of room for any street trees on that side with the presence of some utilities and services that are going to be in there as well. Street trees along Scarborough Downs Road. So as I mentioned back on this landscaping plan here, we're proposing it on the western side of Downs Road with the presence of on-street parking, which is going to help this lot 34 here and plus the driveway. Really don't have any room within the right of way with a sidewalk abutting the on-street parking. So the idea here is that the Lot 34 landscaping plan will incorporate elements that will feel that there's going to be trees in that location as well as other vegetation and bushes along this frontage here as we discussed during sketch plan. And we feel like that'll provide that same tree corridor as coming up from phase 1 and Town Center Residential. Placemaking, there's a request for gathering space, plaza, common areas by the gravel wetland down here. So we are proposing something happening there, but we also want to work directly with town staff on that. We feel that there's some retaining walls along here that provide nice seating for the gravel wetland. We really want this place to be recreational and passive recreation space as well as open lawn space. So we don't want to clutter it up with too many gathering plazas and hardscapes. So we're really looking for providing kind of supplementing what's already there with some approved benches from the previous phase, as well as some additional areas on the corner of the intersection here that kind of ties in with the rest of the intersection in future phases as well. And back to the main DEP level 2 application that is on schedule. So we're anticipating getting approval for that in early July. So a little less than a month right now, I believe is where the goal date is. We have had a first round of comments with everything, and everything's looking pretty good. We're just tidying up some responses to that. I wanted to get into the Hackamore Front Runner intersection real quick. So we did have a town meeting last week about the future phases of this project, but we did discuss the intersection angle that we are proposing, kind of half proposing in this phase, but it really gets carried through in the next phases. So as Jamel mentioned, the Front Runner extension is coming in at a 75-degree angle. There's a couple of reasons for that. So one, we want to align with Sawgrass Drive. Now, we're not providing vehicular connection, but we're providing pedestrian connection to Sawgrass Drive. We want to line up with what their right-of-way is. So right here on the, you can see my screen in my hand, this is where Sawgrass Drive right-of-way is. And we want to line up with it sooner than later to create that nice straight connection into that, at least from a pedestrian point of view. In addition, by having this slight kink in the intersection here, we want to break up Hackamore Ave so that it's not completely straight for a longer period of time, and then reverse curve it back into Sawgrass. So we thought that provided a nice breakup of having a long straight roadway. In addition, and this plan over here, I'll keep going back to it. This provides a nice green open area right here for future development. So if we were to come in at the traditional 90-degree angle and do reverse curves, we're going to chew up some of that green area, and this is going to provide more area really for the green space and kind of complementing the adjacent park here to the east, to the west of it. And to that point, from a visual aspect, we really thought that if you're coming down Hackamore Ave, it'd be nice to look at some green space and some common area right here as much as possible, rather than staring at more roadway and on-street parking. So we really thought if we could get it over there quicker and still meeting all the town ordinances on street connections and angles, that this would be the preferred option. And that way we can provide some sort of placemaking element here to complement the gravel wetland park on this side. So with those reasons, we propose just a 75-degree angle versus a 90-degree angle. Like I mentioned, that does meet the street acceptance ordinance, so there's no formal waiver required for that. There are some examples around town, and I don't need to go through these individually, but I just did want to provide some quick aerials of just other intersections that have less than 90-degree angle from a residential standpoint. So one of the ones I want to draw your attention to is Eastern Village down here with Inspirational Drive and Traditional Street. So it's this intersection right here. We're very close to that. This one provides a wider radius since the streets are just a little bit tighter on the angle. But we're very similar to other neighborhoods and residential streets around Scarborough. And I do also want to mention that we have provided full auto turns, and this intersection does work with a 40-foot fire truck coming down Hackamore and taking the tightest angle, the 75-degree angle here north to Front Runner. So we are providing adequate turning movements for the entire intersection in the design vehicle. That's really all I had for presentation tonight. I'll turn it back to the board and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Drew. We have an opportunity for public comment this evening. If you're here in attendance and would like to speak on this, please use the raise my hand feature. I have Kinley.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Hello, board. I just have a question with what Drew was talking about with the Hackamore aligning with that Sawgrass Drive. So when you talk about that alignment, is it for vehicles to go through Sawgrass Drive into Hackamore Road, or is that just for more of pedestrian walking?
All right, so just so you know, if you have any other questions, you address them through the chair, and then the board will kind of formally request answers out of the applicant. So,
my apologies.
Oh, no, you're fine. Do you have other questions that that you would like answered as well?
Nope, that's the only one. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for attending. Drew or Dan, if you would be so kind. I think it was a good question.
Sure, I can speak to it and Drew can add on. The intention is to provide a pedestrian connection. So we're not proposing a vehicular connection, nor is it allowed under the zoning ordinance. The zone doesn't allow for a vehicular connection that provides access to the entirety of the downs. So it would be a walkway. And in addition, the Portland Water District is requiring a public water main connection. So there also would be a utility connection within that area, but that wouldn't, again, it wouldn't be a vehicular connection.
Thanks, Dan. Okay. Any other public comments this evening? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and turn this over to the board. Board members, questions, comments, clarifications? Rachel.
This is Rick. I had one. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rick.
I had one question. I had one question regarding the street lighting. Did I hear that they're going to rely on the garage lights for street lighting?
Drew, Dan?
Yeah, and with with Crossroads building and developing all these houses, to date, there's been garage mounted lighting on every single garage built in the first phase. And that worked really well with the future. It was working really well with the Futurity Lane. Hayloft is also an access drive. So Daisy Cutter and Futurity Lane both having lighting along that. So we didn't provide any formal pole lighting along those private drives, and we're trying to be consistent with that.
I think
okay,
if I can just clarify, Renick, I guess the staff comment was really just about that curve as you come around. It is a private drive, or actually a private driveway is what it'll end up being called. So I think it was, I understand the comment from staff wasn't necessarily be addressed by the garage lighting at that corner, I guess. It's a 90-degree bend right in the driveway. I think that was staff's comment, just to clarify.
Yeah, so, and that's where I was going with that. I would think that staff I think we need a light on that corner, if that's not too much of a problem.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. We weren't clear on whether it was the entire private alley, but I appreciate that. And we'll look at adding some type of lighting in that location. And Drew, I don't know if you attached the photometrics plan or not, but that could help us. Well, we can work on that before our next return to the board.
Thanks. Rachel.
Okay, that's the only concern I have, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Rick.
Yeah, leave that up. Leave the one up that you've got. As I recall, in a prior meeting when we approved the townhouses and I think the 4 lots that are shown on this the screen, we talked about, or at least I talked about, the open space in between the development. I'm trying to see where it is. And basically, there was some open space there that you've got. And at the time, I asked what was going to be happening to that in terms of placemaking, and I think the answer I got was that would be handled when the whole area was built out. In other words, when this pocket neighborhood was completed. So at some point, I'm going to be looking at that open space to see what it is that you're planning on doing to create a good gathering space there. The other question I had was, you talked about micro homes. Would they, could you talk a little bit more about that? And is that down in the larger development, the larger space? Yeah, that.
I'm happy to speak to that. And it's at this point, Rachel, it's an idea. We have to worked through a few things. One is kind of the growth ordinance for one, and secondarily kind of land on a final layout. But we are interested in pursuing some micro homes, tiny homes, really kind of some smaller 1-bedroom, kind of single story with a loft dwellings that would appeal to seasonal residents or single folks. They could be on the order of 600 to 750 square feet. And I think it's kind of a cool idea that could fit the site quite well. There may be a kind of a common walkway to each of them instead of a driveway to each. Those are just some of the characteristics of what we're thinking, and think this site lends itself pretty well to that type of housing.
Do you have any sense about a number of the homes there?
We've looked at like 6 to 8, thinking about a way to arrange them kind of across from each other. If you can picture that, that turnaround that you see there, is something that might be a temporary condition, while the 4 cottages are occupied. Say they're not built right off for turnaround purposes, but that could be converted into like a shared parking area, for example, and look a little bit different than that. But we wanted to show a hammerhead turnaround for the short term for emergency purposes, but likely would adapt that, with a layout.
Thank you. If you want something cool there, have I got a cool idea for you?
All right.
I don't know if you've taken a look at what's going on with 3D printing of houses, but that's gaining speed in some areas. They are, while you can do a 3D, there are plans out there for 3D printed houses up to 1,900 square feet. It seems that most of them are, the designs and the plans I've seen are around the slightly less than 1,000 square feet, and even smaller. The wonderful thing in back of what you're doing here is once one of the major costs is getting the 3D printer there, and to have the opportunity to build 6 to 8 houses at once is really what makes them very cost effective. And since there's very little wood involved except in the ceiling, except in the roofs, the increased cost of lumber that's going on out there, money is saved on the houses because, well, the walls are concrete that have been laid down by a 3D printer. So I would suspect that there are a fair number of people, whether they're looking for a summer home or they just want something that's very different and very modern and up to date, that might be an interesting option to take a look at. I think the concept that you have and the market that you have is something that's different than we've seen. It's certainly different than we've seen in Scarborough, but at the same time very intriguing. So I'm gonna watch this because I think I think it holds some promise, especially if it's something where you can keep the prices down, and people get to move here, and even if it's just for the summer or perhaps something that's rented out, it could be bought as an investment and rented, I suppose. I kind of like the place where you found it, and some of the things that can be done there. So,
thanks for the tip. I'll look into it. Sounds
yeah. I've done. I said I've done a fair amount of printing, a fair amount of looking once I saw some of the stuff going on. So I also have a little concern about the street being lit by garages. I assume that they are on. It's kind of the homeowners are paying to light the street for somebody else to go through. So what are you going to do if people turn off the lights in their garages? You're going to end up with an awful dark area back there. So it's possible that as you go along, you may want to look at some bollards, not necessarily street lights, but something that somebody other than the homeowner has some control over in terms of creating a less scary walking area at night. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Any other questions from the board? Comments? Jennifer.
I would like to chat about the 75-degree street. Or I just have a question. I'm curious if, actually, before I get to my question even, the other examples of where infrastructure like this exists in town was very helpful. So thanks for whoever did that Google searching. I was just curious if you have looked at any sort of very small roundabout here. I noticed on the slide that you had earlier on with sort of the very large scale overall view of the Downs in its entirety. There are a couple of other locations where it looks like maybe that's proposed. And in the interest of trying to achieve some of the other traffic calming, it just seems like it would potentially fall in line with some of the advantages that you were talking about, Drew. However, I say that recognizing that they often require more space than we typically provide for road alignment in a 4-ish way intersection like this. But given that there may be a little bit of flexibility on that, I was just curious if you have looked into it at all.
Yeah, I'm sure Dan will chime in too, but my first initial reaction is we did think about that. And really the space is really the thing that kind of puts a halt to it in our opinion a little bit. So, I mean, we're really trying to provide some, I keep going back to this, but the passive recreational and open space along the edges of, basically these 4 lots essentially. And with that roundabout, in order to get the design vehicle we need to get through there, it really kind of blows up this intersection quite a bit. And really it's just taking away from that other green space, and it's basically giving it to the center of the roundabout if that was something we were to do, which then is really not usable at all. No one's going to use that for actual open space for any, or even get to it. You don't really want to put pedestrians to it anyway. So, that's kind of my initial thinking was it just didn't make sense in this spot, to be honest. Just given that, we're trying to maximize, again, the passive recreational open space in that.
I don't have too much to add to that, Drew. And I know the board can't see kind of the green space that we've described on what is that, Drew, lot 41. I was thinking a sketch plan, in the future we could, with our next submission, provide more information on that, because we're describing it as green space. You're not benefiting from a plan that shows you that, but we think there's a nice layout to lot 41 that in triangular green space created by having this road adjustment like this, to really kind of break up Hackamore and have it kind of slightly realign, obviously with Sawgrass, and to create that place, and also have a building that's on the other end of the green, that really kind of frames your view, looking down Hackamore. So we can provide that information to help you understand that kind of design desire. And then we also can provide maybe other information to kind of help address any concerns with that angle. But we think it is the kind of the proper design here. We can just kind of work through any concerns with it. It doesn't seem dissimilar to others in the community that have been approved in the past.
I guess I think one of the things that made me think of it initially actually was the softer edge shape of the existing gravel wetland, and actually thinking about some of the green spaces that you have talked about, particularly for passive recreation on that corner, as well as that of the American House lot. Just given that, you know, the lines just sort of seems as though they would complement around a more circular feature there for starters. But then also, you know, thinking about the traffic elements and what that might look like. I mean, it very much looks like the road here to the, so I guess it would be the continuation of Front Runner Way, would be heading on into, you know, what I think we've all sort of been talking about as kind of the, you know, the downtown area, the heart of this project. And that is also a pretty straight alignment. And so, you know, just I'm just curious about it from a number of angles: traffic calming in particular, pedestrian friendliness. You know, it's hard to run a stop sign at something that forces you to go in a, you know, in a roundabout way, no pun intended. Anyway, but you know, I understand the space issues there. I just think that, you know, in some cases you may check off a number of the boxes that you're trying to accomplish by also doing that, you know, placemaking, that type of thing, instead of having sidewalks that come together at a 90-degree angle. If those are adjacent to recreational spaces, human nature is not to walk in 90 degrees. It's to kind of cut across the corner, which would sort of echo a more circular feature. That's all. And then I guess the only other comment or question I had is not really appropriate at this level, so I'll ask it another time.
Thanks, Jen. I just want to make sure that applicant and the board are on the same page on this, because what I have for notes is that we have staff saying there's a couple of these suggestions, and then what we have is an applicant saying that there are reasons they're not doing them. And whether or not the board is looking at the applicant's presentation, and by not mentioning any of the the street trees, maybe the street lights, it sounds like will probably get addressed in one way or another. But pedestrian gathering places, things like that, you know, we've heard the applicant say these are why we're not doing them, and we heard staff give us reasons why they're either required or encouraged. So I just want to be clear that there's not some misunderstanding. Is the board comfortable with the applicant's approach and presentation this evening? By and large, I can only see a couple of you at a time, so keep those head shaking, please.
I do have a comment about that, Nick, and it's sort of general in nature with regard to both the street trees and the street lighting. The explanation about, about why street trees aren't happening in the right of way or the street lighting isn't happening just always makes me think, much, much further afield on some of these lots and properties. And while I know it's hard to imagine any sort of redevelopment happening right now on these sites, if this large parcel here, so we've seen one idea for what could happen here, and we understand that that presentation has come forward with some landscaping planned for up against this right of way, as well as the other smaller residential units that will have garages fronting on those, the roads where the garage lighting is, the explanation is that would be sort of used in lieu of street lighting. But if those are, if any of those are privately held versus, I mean, they're all going to be private property. So anything that if we're relying on requirements that we would otherwise look for in the right of way to be made up for outside of the right of way on a private property, to me, that just always means there's the option down the line for somebody else to not do that. So someone could change the lighting on their garage or tear down their garage or something like that, or build something else out into the landscaped area. And while, there would also be, for any sort of significant redevelopment like that, obviously an applicant would be back in front of the board. But I think you get my point, which is just that, and Rachel kind of touched on it too, that relying on the private lot development to meet some of these needs does, I certainly understand the comment on behalf of staff. And so on the other hand, at least for the street trees on the road here that we're looking at, you have put a lot of other really great things into the right of way. And so do I love the fact that there's no street trees proposed here? No, but I can't, there's a lot of other things that I think are important to accommodate there as well. Which I know is just really wishy-washy, but I think I just wanted to make that statement about in the right of way versus out of the right of way for some of these requirements.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. And I guess for just so I'll put my 2 cents in real quick, from my perspective, Scarborough Downs was a blank slate, clean canvas, so to speak, and all of this has been either discussed and vetted with the applicant at multiple levels, the requirements, the needs, what we desire to see out there. It was all laid out. It's not like any of this is sprung at the last moment. So I think it starts to feel like a death of 1,000 paper cuts. I feel it's like, okay, we lost a tree here, we lose a little lighting there, but we're not even halfway through this project. And I feel like we've already spent a lot of time bending and amending and, kind of looking the other way on some things. And it just makes you question, why are we doing it? It's not like any of this is a surprise. It's not like these zoning ordinances or, the setbacks or anything like that. There aren't any surprises here, especially working off a blank slate. So I think that's part of the, what I would encourage the applicant to just make sure that as you propose these plans, what we're looking for, and nobody on the applicant's team is new to town, and they've been working with this board and the staff for years and years. And I think at this point, you expect some of this stuff to really not keep cropping up. And of course, there's always going to be an issue here or there that pops up. I get it. And I'm not certainly dying on the hill of I need 2 more street trees or this doesn't go anywhere. That's not what I'm saying either. I think it's just an overall statement and a feeling that we see these plans and we're seeing them on a regular basis. And there's always something that we're being asked to give on. And I think over time that wears you down. And that's just my 2 cents on it. Rachel.
Yeah, I can just think of something that would help. I hear you, Nick, and I get worried about the death of 1,000 paper cuts. For instance, as I look at this landscaping plan that's up now, showing what is proposed for the American home. Is it American Homes? Is that what it is? For that lot. As I recall, there's a large garden in back with a trail with a walkway on Hackamore. And in front on the corner, there's a significant buffer. So sometimes seeing what more than, in other words, meshing something that's already been looked at with what's proposed gives a different version and a different view. As I look at that large lot, as I recall what we looked at in terms of buffering along the corner of Downs Road and I don't know, I can't remember what it is. I would request that the print gets a little larger, please. If that buffering stops at a certain point, and my memory fails here, but if it does at a certain point, I may want to see more street trees. So sometimes context is very helpful for us, for at least for me, to make a decision. It might be just fine not to have street trees, on the side of the residential area, the elderly residential area. But I can't tell that until I also see the context of what's already proposed there. So that's the kind of what I look at. It's tough when we're seeing things in isolation, and the more that's going on at the Downs, the more we need context.
Thanks, Rachel. Roger.
The way I look at this is staff pointed out to us in their comments the omissions that would typically be there. And I think the applicant, from my point of view, explained why those omissions are there. And the same way with the 75-degree angle on the intersection. I just think, and I think the landscaping for the American Home, I think that's what it's called, is going to be quite extensive. That's going to be a beautiful location. So I don't think this is necessarily 1,000 cuts or whatever it is. I think, like I said, staff pointed out something that was missing. I think the applicant logically explained it from my point of view, why it was missing. I guess the only question I would have on the whole thing is possibly the lights on the private ways, on the private, in case, like was brought up in case, but I think Dan has a response to that because I saw his finger up before. So that's my point of view. I mean, one thing I agree with you, Nick, we've seen a lot of this already. And I know they understand what they're supposed to be doing. So as long as they can explain to me why they may be deviating from it, and we're allowed to accept that, then I'm fine with it.
Thanks, Roger. Any other board members?
Can I speak to a couple of items to address the board?
Sure, Dan, I think I got one more board comment coming in though.
Okay, sure.
Was that Rick Duperi? Is that I heard?
No, it was Russ, actually, Nick.
Hi, Russ, go ahead.
So I want to come back to this notion that Jennifer brought up of the maybe some sort of circular feature there at the 75-degree angle. Just out of curiosity, Drew or Dan, what would the horizontal difference be? How much additional space would be taken up?
To come in square, I mean, it really depends on where we're talking. I'd want to come in square to the intersection for probably at least 50 feet, something like that, before it curves. So, I mean, we're out here by station 37. You can see, I don't have an exact distance for you, but just eyeballing it, it's probably 25 feet or something like that from a center line difference.
And a roundabout feature, for example, what would that take?
I think you probably have to do something like a 75 to 100 foot roundabout, diameter roundabout in that location. And again, just eyeballing somewhere where my hand is showing would be your edge of pavement. And you'd have to put your right of way and sidewalks around that. So, you'd lose 30 to 40 feet, something like that on the corners at least. And then it'd get better as you get away from it.
It would be helpful in a lot of ways to see this sort of thing when these comments come up. Notwithstanding, you heard a lot of diverse comments here tonight about the project. It would be helpful to see these sorts of things plotted so that somebody could say, hey, we did look at this and let me just show you what that looks like. And this is why we didn't choose it. I think that sort of thing helps a lot here. Notwithstanding the engineering and design features, you have other concerns that weigh on your decision for your design. And what this board is trying to do is just trying to make sense of what you've presented here. And I think there's been some concerns expressed. I'm just speaking from somebody who's new. And again, I know Dan, we talked about once upon a time seeing some sort of a master drawing. You've shown it a couple of times and I love it. I wish I could just freeze frame it and so I could study it, because I don't have the benefit of the knowledge that you all have. I'm new to this whole project and all the various phases, but trying to follow, which is what I'm doing here now, and trying to consider this little piece in the context of the overall project. There's benefits to some of these suggestions that have been made tonight. I think it would help in terms of the project and the feel of the project, but it might be, there might be a short-term economic hit for that sort of thing. That's my only comments, Nick. I'm purposely trying to stay quiet here tonight, so yeah.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it. All right, Drew? I'm not Drew. Dan.
I was just gonna, and I appreciate that, Russ. We have been meaning to provide the board the master plan and actually have an update, like workshop at some point soon. One of the big initiatives right now that I think the board is aware of is the downtown committee. And we're working with another town committee on the layout of the center of the project. And Jennifer kind of rightly brought up that in past plans, there was a vision for the center of the project to be in the center of the site, in the middle of the inner track. The more we've worked with this committee and the more we've worked with our consultants, we're thinking the commercial center or mixed use center of the project is more to the west, closer to more like northerly of the grandstand, which would actually kind of take the, not drive as much traffic through the intersection we were just talking about. And those are we're working with another committee on sort of how that plays out. So there are a lot of kind of bigger picture dynamics that we look at. And as soon as that committee gets a presentation later in June, I'm excited to present it to the planning board. So you kind of see where that's headed. We first need to kind of review with them, given the role of that committee. Just on a more micro level, about street trees. Actually, the only reason we didn't provide street trees where Jamel suggested is because of site distance in terms of the driveways to the American House site. So if the town's peer reviewers, we're happy to work with the town's peer reviewer on trying to get street trees in there where there isn't on-street parking. So we're not trying to get out of street trees as much as manage the expectations of the board based on comments we've gotten in the past around site distance. If you see that northerly driveway, there's not trees on either side of it where they would fit. So we're happy to work with staff and Bill Bray to see if they fit and also meet site distance requirements. But that's the reason they're not there currently. And we'll look at that again. The lighting, I think we're fine adding the lighting where Angela suggested. We weren't 100% sure as to that's the intent. So we think lighting can work there. Likely would add a light at the end of that drive with the micro homes. So you kind of have a light when you come in and then likely a light when you get past the homes. But we'd rather not plunk a street light kind of in between garages that are kind of tightly knit. And we didn't do that in past phases. And I don't think Eastern Village, Dunstan Crossing have done that on private alleys, but where there's kind of key points along the way, we're happy to do that to make sure it's safe. And I guess lastly, just on the intersection design, we're pleased to kind of provide more context. 75% is allowed under the ordinance. And we kind of came in with a compliant design. So, and think it's better than having a 90-degree intersection, frankly, from an aesthetic standpoint. So we'll certainly follow up.
Nick, can I jump in?
Absolutely.
I guess I wanted to, just from staff's point of view, I guess, speak up a little bit to first off about the lighting. And I guess I'm of the opinion that our lighting or standard really goes to the fact that we're not lighting sidewalks for, and so it's really about motorist safety. So that's where my concern was focused on the curve. And to, I guess, Dan and Drew's point, I guess I would be in agreement with people's as far as a lot of people ask for streetlights for their private property, safety, or from things from theft and things like that. And I don't think that's the intent. So I appreciate them working with us on really just around kind of that motorist safety piece. But I did want to also speak to the intersection because we have had conversations internally, and I think it will be a continuing comment from staff to the board to look at, just because we're also looking at it from Public Works comments about operations and maintenance through this intersection. And I appreciate the examples given. However, I guess I do see differences in like Eastern Village, where if you're coming through an intersection, and I'm thinking of it as with a large plow coming through there, that you're following a curb line through it because it was a 3-way intersection. So you're following a curb through it rather than coming straight into a curb because it's jetted out in front of you. And the other point I would make is that I think we've had a lot of lessons learned with Eastern Village is not our standard. We found that there are a lot of things in there that we wouldn't probably recreate just from emergency vehicles and plows and other things in there. And I understand we're in a new era about dense development. So there's things that we do have to accommodate, totally understand that. And I know Public Works is making all their, a lot of attempts to purchase new equipment and do a different kind of mindset on how they go about their job. So I just think there's still some conversations that have to be had to make sure that Public Works and police, fire, everybody is on the same page, I guess, to the board's comments earlier, or Nick's comments earlier. And so I can appreciate what the Downs is trying to work around, but from looking at it from our standpoint, it's, I think also mentioned, it's a blank slate, right? So we're forcing a design to work around something that's not there yet. And then also about aligning with Sawgrass, where you'd need a straight alignment at Sawgrass where you don't have vehicles, seems to be counterintuitive. Why wouldn't you have the intersection where the vehicles are actually going to be going straight through, be more conducive to vehicles, and have where you can have meandering curves and things that wouldn't matter as much for a cyclist or pedestrian, and kind of make it up on that end. So that's where I think we're struggling a little bit, trying to figure out what we're working around, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Angela. Any other board comments? All right. Seeing none. Dan, my understanding is that you're still awaiting a DEP permit at this time. Yeah. So I suspect we'll see you resubmitting in a couple weeks.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item, staff report.
I can jump in if Angela doesn't want to quite yet. So I do have an update from Jay Chase, our planning director, about the comprehensive plan and where it is in the process. I know he emailed you guys before the meeting, but he asked me to update you guys. So as part of the comprehensive plan process with the state requires council and planning board to conduct a public hearing on the matter before adoption. So while the Long Range Planning Committee is charged by town ordinance with preparing and coordinating updates to the plan, the council is actually responsible for the adoption, and this planning board serves an important role in your quasi-judicial role of reviewing development scenarios against the town ordinances. So the comprehensive plan has had nearly 4 years of public input and discussion, and council is being asked to consider a vote on the matter in the upcoming month or so. So many of you on the planning board have been involved over the years, helping to shape the plan as it's drafted, and it's believed to reflect the public input and community feedback. So on June 16th, the public hearing of the planning board and town council will begin around 7. Board members should attend via Zoom as requested by the town manager to help facilitate the meeting due to limited seating capacity at town hall. The link will be provided on the town's calendar on the website a few days prior to the meetings, and staff will also try to remember to send out the link as well. The format on June 16th will be generally as follows. So staff will give a brief overview of the project and then turn the matter to council. Council is likely to solicit committee members' comments or turn directly to the public at that point. And board members should be prepared to use the raise your hand feature as other folks do in these meetings, should you choose to speak on the matter. So no action is actually required by the planning board other than to be present for the hearing. We should have a quorum. We need to make sure we have that. But please do feel free to share any thoughts you have during the meeting as well. And upcoming meetings of note, on June 9th, the council is having their public hearing and first reading of the plan at 6 p.m. And on June 30th, a joint town council and long range planning committee hearing will take place in an anticipated vote by council. So finally, the plan's available on the town website, along with lots of background materials, including past meetings, public process, etc. So I'll try to answer any questions, but I know Jay emailed you this information as well. Just wanted to provide you guys with that update. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamal. Roger, you got a question?
Yeah, Jamal, so the only obligation we have is to be around there for 7 o'clock right now?
For June 16th, yes.
Yeah.
I would check with Jay, Chase, and Karen Martin just to be sure, though, leading up to it.
Yeah, because I originally had a town council planning board workshop between 6 and 7. And the comprehensive plan public hearing at 6:30 to 7:30 or something like that.
Yeah, there were a few things on the agenda. There's also going to be a joint council planning board workshop for a contract zone amendment proposed as well. So just stay tuned to your email, and we'll be sure to make sure we have the right times.
All right. Administrative amendment report?
None at this time.
Correspondence?
All set.
Planning board comments? I've got one. So I just want to let you as a board know that this is my last planning board meeting. I'll be submitting my resignation in the morning to the town from the planning board. And just want to say thank you. It's been quite an experience working with all of you. Life just gets crazy. And between small kids and sports and my business, which requires evening meetings as well, it's just become a little too much, and something's got to give. So I did my 8 years of hard time on the planning board, and I think it's time to step away. I know you're in good hands. Rachel will surely run this board well, and I know the rest of you are all very talented. And again, I thank you for years of great memories and good service, sometimes frustration, but I think that's what makes us stronger is knowing you get together with a group of people like this. And at the end of the day, you can be productive and put out a good product. So appreciate it. Thanks. Rachel.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for all the work that you have done on behalf of the people of Scarborough. 8 years is an awful lot. I mean, it's 2 presidential terms. I really appreciate your leadership and your gentle chiding of us to move forward when we need to. I appreciate the true professionalism you've shown, and again, your dedication to the people of Scarborough and the work that you've done for them. So thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
You will be missed.
Roger.
Yeah, I want to thank you too, Nick. I think you've been a good chair. I've enjoyed working with you. And you can always come back. I'm proof of that.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate it. Any other board comments?
Hey, Nick, everything they said and more. And yeah, I'm tearing up. So I thought it was a 10-year sentence, man. I thought you had a 10-year sentence, and that was just good behavior. Which I'm not sure I've seen. Come on.
Yeah, Rick, I had honestly hoped to make it to December, which is the end of my actual full term, because my first go around was I took over a partial term for somebody. So I'd hope to really complete out the rest of this year, but it's just it can't do it right now, and it's unfortunate. It's bittersweet. I'll say that. So, but I appreciate the support.
Well, I completely understand. Again, I appreciate your leadership and professionalism, and I think you taught us all a lot, and I appreciate that.
Thanks. Rachel?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, following up on Roger's comment, is there is an opening for an alternate to the planning board.
I'm going to try retirement for a bit, Rachel.
Something to think about.
We can hear from you again, Nick, when they receive some more redevelopment plans for that church up by your house.
There's a now hiring sign on it. I kid you, everyone's hiring, even the church that's not being used. So
Nick, you started in August of 2013.
Oh, I almost made it the full 8, huh? It was so close. Yeah, it's been a haul, but I appreciate it. And look, staff, I mean, having 8 years of spent time with staff, best staff ever. I mean, seriously, we're very fortunate in this town. So, and they help keep me in line too. So, all right. Any other planning board comments?
Wish you well, Nick. I wish I had an opportunity to meet you in person. This damn COVID is driving us all crazy, but I wish
that would be the one regret, if I could just have made it one more in-person meeting. But
he's only 5'2" in person.
Thanks, Ross. Any other planning board comments this evening?
I can just jump in. I think I can speak for all of the planning and codes department that we really enjoyed working with you as well, Nick. And it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for all your hard work.
Thanks, Jamal. All right. With that, I'm going to make the best motion of the evening. I will move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor. Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd.
Yes.
Roger Beely.
Yes.
Rick Duperry.
Yes.
Nick McGee. Yes. So that is unanimous. Thank you, everyone.